still made. 2022, downtown Madison, Kiwanis. We'll start with the pledge. Flags in the back, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one under God, indivisible, with liberty for all. Okay, I didn't do a count yet, but I'll do that afterwards. Welcome, everybody. I assume everybody saw my message about Dolly and her positive COVID the next day. Take precautions. She's doing fine. It was just mild cold symptoms, but as those things happen because of what COVID is doing now, I'll inform you of that. And obviously masks are optional, but I'm gonna keep wearing mine even though I'm double boosted and have had COVID, so. Okay, we have our speaker today, who I believe Jim Patch is going to introduce from the Children's Theater of Madison. So here's Jim back from vacation in Florida, where he had an interesting few situations you can ask him about.
I just want you all to know that there is no such thing as COVID in Florida. Alan Ebert is the Executive Director of Children's Theater of Madison, and most of us know it as CTM. And he's held that position since 2015. I just discovered today that he and I have a couple of things in common. I knew we had one thing in common, but we have two things in common. One thing that I knew about is he's involved in theater management, and I was in theater back in my youth, in community theater. I was a dancer. And the other thing that we have in common, and I didn't know that until today, is that he spent 4 years in Italy as the Armed Forces Entertainment Coordinator, I think it was. And so he and his wife are fluent in Italian. And what's common about that, what I have in common with that is my mother was an Italian war bride. She grew up in Pisa. And he knows Italian, and I lost it, much to my mother's chagrin. What happened? I just lost the sound. There it goes. Okay, prior to his current position, Alan was the Arts Resource Coordinator for the UW Arts Institute. He was production manager of the UW-Madison Unions. He was operations director for the Wisconsin Film Festival, and he was the executive director for the La Crosse Community Theater. And Alan did graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, in theater arts. Please welcome Alan Ebert.
Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. It's been, I'm sure, an interesting road these last 2 years for social groups like yourself and for obviously arts organizations as a whole. There's nothing like something happening which causes 2/3 of your revenue stream to come to a stop in one day, right? Imagine, leading a business, your employees. So I'll get into that a little bit about how did we navigate these interesting times. Let's get it up to the slideshow. Just second now, I can exit that.
Oh, we need to share.
Uh-oh, I'll let you handle
It's all
that.
these different
All
steps
these technical things.
that we forget.
So as she's getting all of that set up, so as Jim said, I've been with Children's Theater of Madison starting my 7th season now. So a little bit about CTM, where we were and where we're going. So in 1965, CTM was founded by Nancy Thoreau. Maybe some of you know her. She and some of her sorority sisters actually founded CTM in the basement of a church, I think, and then they were actually on campus. They were on campus in a sorority together, and they said, "Hey, we want to have theater for kids and bring theater to kids." And so they formed Children's Theater of Madison. And throughout the years, it went through many different variations and operated very much like a community theater. And at one point became Family Theater of Madison, actually, because the name got confusing. So they actually said, well, it's not just youth who are in doing shows for youth, it's adults and youth together doing shows. But there wasn't really a paid staff. I mean, it was Nancy, right? Nancy who did the philanthropic work, who put it all together, and then had a lot of volunteers that from the community that made the shows possible. Well, in 2006, 2007, Nancy's health started failing and CTM's board decided there needed to be a change. And when they did the change, they discovered there was quite a bit of debt for numerous reasons. And so actually the headline in the State Journal read, "Curtain falls on CTM." Now it's like a death sentence, right? So even though we weren't really gone, because we kept our educational programs going, which I'll talk about that because that's really the backbone of Children's Theater of Madison, is all the classes that we teach year round. And Nancy did a great job of establishing that program. What they did was they canceled their productions, but the classes were still going on. Well, a couple of donors stepped up and said, all right, this has been an institution in Madison. We can't let this go away. So some of the board members, some donors stepped up to create a small operating reserve to get back on its feet. So they covered the debt and had about $300,000 operating budget. And that's when they reached out to Roseanne Sheridan, who was working at APT at the time, brought her in to be the artistic director of Children's Theater of Madison. And imagine coming into that position and donors and others looking at you and saying, okay, don't let this fail. You know, like we're doing a bailout and let's go. So she directed A Christmas Carol, was the first show that she did in 2008, and it went very, very well. And they said, could you do another show? And she's like, sure. And they said, can we hire you? And so they hired her. She directed To Kill a Mockingbird. And then she started to hire staff. And Roseanne's philosophy was, all right, let's look at what the trends are. What are we good at? What should we be providing to the community? And Roseanne looked at the community and said, all right, first and foremost, we need to get productions back up. So she hired a production manager. Then she hired an education director to really look at our educational programs. And so all of a sudden we went from a $300,000 operating budget and since like 2007 to 2015, we grew to a $1.1 million operation. And so all of a sudden Roseanne's like, okay, I can't direct and manage all of this, the growth that was happening, a lot of youth coming into the theater, and the productions were being successful. So that's when I came in. And it was really interesting because we were growing leaps and bounds in 2015. At that time, we had over 1,500 youth coming through our annual classes, 600 in summer alone. So in 2-month time period, we had 600 kids coming through and being educated, learning life skills. It's not about becoming the next Broadway actor. If that happens, that's wonderful. But it's more about using theater skills to learn life skills, to learn how to communicate, time manage, how to present yourself, how to market yourself. So all these intangible skills that you learn by going through the process of theater is what is at our core. So I'm going to go here. So this is our mission. And actually, we just changed our mission statement coming out of COVID. And so I'll let you look at that. So CTM sparks imagination and builds community through the creation and experience of theater. So that is our mission. And these are our values: collaboration, inclusion, learning, and joy. So we want to ensure youth and adults alike are having a joyous experience, no matter in what they're creating, and that they're hopefully learning by doing, that we're inclusive, that we're representing all of Madison, not just some of Madison, and that it is a collaborative environment where we're hearing all voices and all perspectives. So this here, this is, so pre-pandemic, like I said, I'm going to go through these slides. We had 1,150 youth that were engaged in our educational programs. We had almost 12,000 students come to our school matinee programs. Now, the school matinee programs are amazing for us. One, it's a great access and intro to theater. So here's a stat for you and an interesting bit of information. So the National Endowment for the Arts did a study, and they said that if a child has not been exposed to the arts by age 10, they will not have an appreciation for the arts. And they actually did studies and found this out. So it's really impressive. So our goal is to get them in as young as possible and just have them experience art. Whether they like it or not is up to them, but at least it's been introduced to them. And some of these youth, because of financial barriers or family situation, would never have been exposed to a theater or to a live production if it wasn't for this program. So anyone who's on free and reduced lunch gets in free. And we do it on a percentage. We work with the school system. So it is a really great program and it's pretty amazing. So we just finished a show called Calabasas Street, which was part in Spanish and part in English, about a Latinx family. A majority of our audience was very diverse and was from the Latinx community. And when we did our talkbacks, they were done in Spanish because the kids got up and asked their questions in Spanish, and our actors were all Latinx and answered in Spanish. So it was great for those youth who don't speak Spanish to have a window into, wow, there's other things happening in Madison. It kind of bursts their bubble, if you would, and they start thinking a little differently. And that's our goal, is to help that happen. So Exceptional Family Entertainment, this was a production of Wizard of Oz that we did pre-pandemic. And then every year we do Madison's A Christmas Carol. So a lot of people don't realize that it's Children's Theater of Madison. It happens in the Overture Center and the Capitol Theater. So if you ever been to see that, that's a Children's Theater of Madison production. Now, the thing that we always fight is the word children, right? Children's Theater of Madison. So the stigma or thought is a lot of people think it's all youth, for youth, by youth, which is one way to do theater for youth. But we actually hire professional actors and adults to act alongside our youth. So we do age appropriate casting. So we could have a show that is entirely all adults, but is dealing with youth moral themes, motives. So as long as it's speaking to youth issues and youth at the center, it doesn't necessarily have to be all youth. And we really believe in the education process of having adults alongside you so that they can learn from each other. So we're really big in the multi-generational aspect of how does that learning happen? Because at the heart, we're all youth, I think, right? We all like to play. And we do, compelling dramas for teens and young adults. So it's interesting when we're putting our season together, we try to do a show for the real young. So these are youth that are 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years old. Then we try to do 2 shows that are really for the middle school group. So 5, 6, 7 years old up till 12 years old. Then we try to do a show for our teenage audience. And so there's a lot of thought and planning that goes into what show, what age group type of show. This is just a shot of our one of our school matinees. And like I said, education is at the core of what CTM does. So we do academic year-round classes. And we also go out into the community. So one of the things, 2 things that we have recently done, we've been doing what's called Young Playwrights for many, many years. So we send teaching artists out into schools, middle schools and high schools, and we work with their teachers and they write 10-minute plays. And they do that for the year. And then we select the 10-minute plays and do a stage reading of them at the Overture, or now at the new My Arts facility, which I'll talk about that in a little while. So they come in, they're realized in the stage reading, and they get to hear their work, their classmates get to hear their work, and the community can can actually come and see it too. And it's a really great literacy and writing program to help advance that. And it's pretty amazing, some of the stories that you hear. And actually, in the last 3 years pre-COVID, 3 of our plays won the national, were selected for the national award, and then were put into an anthology of 10-minute plays. So that student actually got published in a 10-minute play. So really, really cool. I said our summer stage program, really big program for us. And obviously with COVID, you can imagine, gone. And we tried to, the favorite word, pivot, right? You heard that word a lot during COVID, to virtual or online learning, which we did during the pandemic, but it just isn't the same. Especially our youth need to be with one another, and they were also burned out. They had screen fatigue. They didn't want to do that anymore. They were sick of it. They had to do school on it. They didn't want to have to do fun on it or play on it. So it was like, it became, we had to try to find other ways to engage with our youth. Now that we're coming back, I can say I'm really excited. Our enrollment for this summer is really strong right now. And that just demonstrates the need that the youth have of wanting to come back together in a safe environment. And then we have advanced programs like our Actors Academy, which you have to audition to get into. So these are for youth who are really wanting to focus as theater as a possible life job or something that they want to pursue more deeply. Here are just a couple of quotes that you can read from Phoebe, who's on the right-hand side there, and then the Ginsburg family, who moved during COVID, moved out to Denver, but Andrew is and his daughter and stuff still stay in touch with us. So navigating the pandemic, like I said, was a very interesting time when you couldn't be in person. So literally, we were in March when mid-March when the pandemic hit. We were about ready to open Peter Pan. It was going to be a magical production in the Capitol Theater with flying and everything else. We were one day from opening. And so actually the mandate came down right in our last dress rehearsal. So our last dress rehearsal, we invited family and friends up to 250 because that was the cap to come see the production. And it was an amazing, magical evening because one, actors didn't know when they would be back. No one knew what was going on. But for one night, we could realize this production with audience because we always say a production isn't finished until the last cast member is there. The last cast member is the audience. And so had the audience, it was beautiful, but then our set stayed in the overture for 8 months before we could get back in there to even take it down. Not knowing what was going to happen, I immediately formed a COVID task force of our board and started talking through, number one, how do we keep our employees whole during this time? Because at our height, we have 150 seasonal employees, 12 full-time employees. So we have quite a impact in the community when it comes to jobs and economic impact. And that became crazy. We were about a $2 million operating budget pre-pandemic. So there was a lot to think about, a lot to try to figure out. What it did, though, was really bring the arts community really close together, especially in Madison and nationally. So I've been on national calls monthly with the TYA USA, which is Theater for Young Audiences, United States of America. Which is an organization we belong to. So I meet with all the other executive directors from around the nation, and we talk through all the ups and downs and challenges that we're having. And we as an industry, how are we going to move forward? Right now, we're being told it's going to take at least 18 months for us to get back to pre-pandemic levels. And the reason being is we're all individuals and we all have different comfortabilities, right? In terms of, okay, am I comfortable going back and bringing my family into a theater? And, you know, is it going to happen? We've gone through 2 years of kind of false starts where we were hoping to do a production and then it got canceled because of COVID, or we're going to hope to get started. And so now people's buying patterns have changed drastically. So as opposed to people pre-buying, which is what a lot of theaters rely on and arts rely on, is that subscription-based model. Now people are like, I'm not gonna pay until I know what's gonna happen. So in the height of Omicron, we had our subscription and it didn't go as well as we had hoped. So now we have a lot of walk-up single ticket buyers, but it's still not enough because now people have the option, right? You're guaranteed that money if they pre-buy. If not, you may have a dinner or something else that you're like, yeah, I want to go see that show, but something else comes up and then you change your plans, right? So we have to make a different model, and so we're looking at that right now as an industry for sustainability. I am going to play a short video here for you.
What a year it has been. Children's Theater of Madison is excited to share with you everything that we have been doing. And so here is our end of year report, our 21 in 21.
The relaunch of the Google product reached over 4,000 views online. The 4 short plays by Idris Goodwin provided families and teachers with a toolkit to spark conversation about race.
We engaged 111 students in our virtual classes from January to May.
Over 6 months, we cleared over 10,000 feet of warehouse.
We moved over 6,000 costumes.
2,000 props.
And 300 boxes of office supplies. To finally move into our permanent home at My Arts, Madison Youth Arts. And for the first time in CTM history, to have all our work under one roof. Classes, rehearsals, summer camps, offices, construction shops, and more.
We welcomed 296 students back to in-person summer stage.
15 interns worked with us both in person and virtually. 5 of whom identified as having a disability and were supported through the Rosemary Kennedy Initiative through the Kennedy Center.
We partnered with our teaching artists to form the Anti-Racist Teaching Collective, to foster community and to discuss the tools needed to be anti-racist arts educators.
We planned a 4-show Make Safe season and sent our season brochure to 38,000 households.
We provided financial assistance for 24 students to attend CTM classes.
We welcomed 249 people to our spectacular event, celebrating a new space and raising funds to continue CTM's mission and commitment to youth in our community.
Thanks to Smart Orders, we have a one-of-a-kind CTM van, which will provide transportation accessibility to our CTM community.
Along with other theater for young audience companies around the nation, CTM signed the pledge agreement for anti-racist and anti-oppressive futures for theater. 159 students participated in in-person fall classes, including 73 students who are new to CTM.
We hired 35 teaching artists to work with students of all ages in 2021.
We administered 579 COVID tests to cast, crew, designers, and staff to keep them safe.
Our new costume shop and its staff constructed an altar over 600 costume pieces for our first show as we return to live.
We welcomed 6,001 people back to live theater for a Christmas dinner, outperforming our projected ticket sales by $8,000.
In total, CTM reached 4,072 youth through our programming in the past 12 months.
Your continued support of Children's Theater of Madison helps us move forward together in 2022 and beyond. If you'd like to learn more about how you can participate in CTM's programs and initiatives, visit our Get Involved page on our website at ctmtheater.org. Because of people like you, we continue to spark imagination and build community through the creation and experience of theater. And who better to share what CTM is all about than our young people themselves?
CTM has given me so many experiences that I'll never forget. Anyone who is involved with CTM is a better person.
At CTM, I've grown as a collaborator, performer, and all-around person.
CTM provided me a community of like-minded people.
CTM inspired me to be myself and make lifelong connections.
CTM is the space where I feel the most creative.
CTM is the place where I can be.
CTM is the one place where I feel comfortable expressing my whole self and not be ashamed of it.
So a couple things from that video. For Christmas Carol was our first show back after the pandemic. And in order to get it mounted, so we had 60 cast crew involved with that production. We had to test everyone twice a week for rapid tests for a 6-week period. Which at the time I was like, how are we going to pay for this? Because that's a lot of money. Had we had to pay for it, we were looking at around $20,000 just in COVID testing alone to get the show up, which was crazy. So something that you don't budget for or think about. Thankfully, we were able to work with the Department of Health Services to be able to get the test kits for free of charge because we were an educational / youth group. And so they worked with us on that. So thank goodness, and we're still doing that today for a lot of our productions. Not as intensive. We're doing once a week now or when symptoms present themselves. So you also heard we had a big move during this COVID time. So when COVID happened, we were in construction on the new Madison Youth Art Center, which is Children's Theater of Madison's new home. We're an anchor partner with Madison Youth Choirs. So when I came on board at CTM, we were spread out all over the place. Had a lot of youth, but no one knew where CTM was. Was it Overture Center? Was it in the Bethel Lutheran Church? Was it in the basement of Cento? So we were spread out at 7 or 8 different places. And I had 7 or 8 different landlords who I had to negotiate year after year in order to keep costs where I needed them. And for a Christmas Carol every year, I had to find an empty warehouse to rehearse a Christmas Carol every year. And the commercial real estate agents would not work with me until October, which gave me very little time because rehearsals would start in November, because if they could get a long-term lease, obviously they wanted that. So we had to wait to see what was available and then swoop in and hopefully, and then stay there for a month. So it was very interesting times. So I did an assessment and asked board and staff, I said, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? One of the first questions I asked. And 29 of 30 people said facilities. So I knew where I needed to spend my time and research looking. So I started looking at how we were operating, and had we not found a place, we would have had to change how we operate. It just was not a sustainable model. And I worked for 3 years trying to find a place, and finally found this place, which is near East Washington. So it's part of the Stonehouse development, the Arden on the backside. So we're right across from Lapham Elementary School. Amazing location. It's a 4-story, 70,000 square foot facility that is really focused on the process education space, because that's what was lacking in Madison. We have a lot of beautiful performance spaces, but we didn't have a space really to do the work that adequately. And that actually had the proper tools needed to support youth. So now we are here, and we moved, thank goodness, for COVID, because I don't know how we would have moved trying to do a full season and move a 16,000 square foot warehouse at the same time. So very fortunate. So we're really focused on equity, diversity, and inclusion. How do we use the new facility coming out of COVID to expand programming and to impact for our youth and families? We actually, for the first time ever, had what was called a YOCO show, or youth company show, that actually toured to community centers via the smart motor van that we had. So we had a group of actors, a set fit in the van, and then they would go out to community centers in this past year and present James and the Giant Peach, which was pretty amazing. So we're going to continue to look at that program and expand it. We have a very strong internship program. So these are interns, high school interns and college interns who work with us. And then we have new works that we're looking at too. We're actually in the development of a national new work with 2 other TYA companies, Omaha Theater, the Rose in Omaha, and then Charlotte Children's Theater in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then Children's Theater of Madison will be the 3 creators of this original work that will premiere here next year. So, and there's our lovely gift from Smart Motors, and they have been a great educational sponsor for us. Yeah, so that is Children's Theater of Madison, yesterday and today, and who knows the future. So questions?
You drive down East Washington, towards the square, and you see the sign for your new building. But the sign is not very good. What does it say?
My Arts,
M-Y.
Y Arts.
Yeah, and most people don't know what that is.
Yes. That's,
So hopefully you're gonna get something better because
Can you repeat the question?
yeah, sorry. So yeah, the question was, or comment was about the sign that we have that's on the corner of East Washington and Ingersoll Street. And so a couple things, right? So hey, we know our city legislator, right? And our city, if you would reach out to them, everyone, and ask if we could have a bigger sign, because we can't. So I can tell you the sign process in Madison is, and I lived in La Crosse, so I was part of, I was selected by the mayor to be part of La Crosse Future. How do you have percentage of art as part of the city? And how do you relook at signage, codes, and requirements? And I can tell you, unfortunately, Madison is behind in terms of really thinking creatively of how we can do this, because you have to go through so much red tape. If we wanted to get a bigger sign there, it would take us another 2 years, which might happen, unfortunately, but we are locked in based on what the city codes are right now. So I do appreciate you saying that, and it's the best we can do with what is presented with us at this time. But that doesn't mean we're not going to stop trying. So I appreciate you saying that, because yes, we want people to know. Plus, it's a branding thing. We opened during COVID. A lot of people don't know what My Arts is. So please, you can look at, there's a website, MadisonYouthArts.org. And also, if you go to ctmtheater.org, we are looking for volunteers, ushers, and all of that. So if you're interested in being at the center and volunteering and helping out in any way, we would welcome all of you. So.
Cool.
Is there room in the new building?
Great question. So the question was, is there room for us to do performances in the new building? So I'm going to give you a funny anecdotal story. So a lot of you may or may not be aware, but probably are aware, Pleasant Rowland was the angel donor, lead legacy donor, amazing gift that she made. And I went to present to do the ask to her. We had many conversations, Pleasant and I, the 7 years that I've been with CTM. And I remember going to do the ask, and about a month earlier, we presented and said there isn't going to be a performance space. We were going to have 4 large black boxes. So black boxes are like flexible performance spaces up on the 4th floor, because this was all about having classroom space for our education classes. And when we went to present to Pleasant, she said, "Where's the theater?" And we all, for 30 seconds, was dead air. And I got in the car after that meeting, called the architect, and I said, "Is there any way to get a theater on this site?" Because it is a unique site. It's long and narrow. It's about 250 feet long and about 50 feet wide. And we also had the production shop, so we couldn't put it on the 1st floor. So the only place it could go was on the 4th floor. And Epstein Ewan Architects went to the drawing board and said, "Yeah, we can fit it in." And then we went back and presented. So yes, there is a 300-seat theater. Beautiful space. We just opened Disney's Freaky Friday, opened this weekend, and it runs the next 3 weekends. So if you're interested in coming to see that, let me know. I know someone who can get you tickets, so they have my email, so just let me know. Great musical, and you'll be able to see the space. But there's also a black box space, and the black boxes are now where we do all of our rehearsals for Christmas Carol and all of our shows. So no longer have to look for that. And we're still a resident of Overture Center. We get that asked a lot. So are we going to continue doing shows at Overture? We'll continue doing a Christmas Carol, obviously, every year there, because it's just too big of a show when we would have to run a Christmas Carol for 2 months straight in the new center to hit the numbers. So that will remain there. And then a couple other shows. So we'll do shows at both places. But it's primarily offices and classes are all now under one location. So, which is really has made a huge, huge difference.
What's your approximate ratio of ticket sales to fundraising for your operating budget?
It's a great question. So I'm going to talk pre-pandemic, because I just don't know what the pandemic threw a wrench in it, and post-pandemic, who knows. So pre-pandemic, I really come with a philosophy of diversification, meaning I do not want one pot to be so heavy that if something like a pandemic happens, all of a sudden we are done. So ticket sales account for about 35% of our operating revenue. 30% comes from our tuition and classes, and then the rest comes from contributed revenue. So I do make a really concerted effort to keep it within those lines. The challenge is now that we're dealing with inflation, we're also trying to deal with market correction for employee wages and salaries. Our biggest challenge right now is the gig economy is really slim. And the gig economy is all the designers, carpenters, directors, choreographers, had to find other jobs because they couldn't for 2 years not work. And so now the pool of talent is really small and everyone's opening back up and we're all fighting for the same small pool. So we had to figure out a way to develop a better pipeline and opportunities, which we're focusing on and looking at. But in the interim, it's going to be an interesting 2 to 3 years here. And what you're going to find is a lot of arts organizations received federal one-time monies, which was great. And thank you. Thank you to anyone who refunded their tickets during this and all of that. And a lot of arts organizations are financially more stable than they ever have been. However, the next 2 years, and I prepared my board for this, is we're going to have drastic deficit budgets, trying to remount and come back and not knowing how ticket sales are going to rebound. So that becomes a real, I'm in the heat of it right now. I'm working on budgets for 22, 23 because our fiscal year runs September through August. And it's interesting. I'm looking at some very interesting numbers right now and trying to navigate all of that. So.
Last question, Ken.
Just a comment on the signs. When I worked for the county was asked to come up with a logo for the Light Energy Center. We submitted that to the city of Madison, the city, Dean County, okay, whatever you want, we'll give you. City of Madison said, no, we don't like that, but you came up with this is what we're gonna do. They have all kinds of things.
Typical Madison.
I've learned a lot going through this construction process. Let me tell you.
Okay, thank you very much. Very, very informative. I'm not a theater person. My wife and I just don't do it, but I found very interesting. So thank you so much. We have our moment of reflection from Corky, who's online. Corky was feeling a little bit under the weather, but she still wanted to do her moment of reflection. So can you bring up Corky?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. These are sayings about the month of May. Had I done this last week when Co and I changed times, everybody would have laughed, but now we have really nice weather, so this is more appropriate. Okay, so here are several sayings about the month of May. Charles Macklin says, "You are as welcome as the flowers in May." Heinrich Heine, "In the marvelous month of May, when all the buds were bursting, then in my heart did love arise. In the marvelous month of May, when all the birds were singing, then did I reveal to her my yearning and longing." Fennel Hudson says, "May, more than any other month of the year, wants us to feel most alive." Tam Mossman writes, "Horticulturally, the month of May is opening night, homecoming, and graduation day all rolled into one." Charlotte Smith, "Another May, new buds and flowers shall bring. Ah, why has happiness no second spring?" Francis Quarles, "Let all the joys be as the month of May, and all thy days be as a marriage day." Edwin Way Teal, "The world's favorite season is the spring. All things seem possible in May." Marty Rubin. In May, the lilacs are in bloom. Forget yourself. Vera Britton. I thought that spring must last forevermore, for I was young and loved, and it was May. William Shakespeare. As full of spirit as the month of May, and as gorgeous as the sun in midsummer. So there you are.
Thank you, Karki. And I think we have about 5 days of summer and then we're back to spring next week.
Yes.
It's gonna be interesting. I have a card for Pat Eldred. She's feeling under the weather. Pass it around and return it to Richard. So we'll go this way. Pat Eldred. Patricia. Okay, I want to thank Meg Galloway for chairing the meeting or doing the president-elect thing last week when I was up at a funeral up in Duluth. It was still winter up there. They still had snow. There was still ice on our lake. Ay, ay, ay. And it was very, very wet. They've had an extremely wet winter and spring. Lots of flooding. Announcements. I'll start off with acknowledging that Penny and I did bingo at, where is it? I always forget the name of it. Oakwood West. We had a rousing time giving away candy. It was fun. Tom came but could not participate because of their COVID restrictions. He'd been exposed obviously on Monday. I had not, so we could do that. Let's see. We also had on Saturday a Miracle League uniform and cap stuffing activity at Cottage Grove. John Esser, Abe Aberly, Cole Williams, Penny, Dick Hammerstrom. I always forget your last name. Naled. Sorry, Penny. Dick Hammerstrom, myself, and Bill Schultz were there to stuff for about an hour and a half. And again, at least consider coming out to watch a game sometime. They've almost doubled, if not over doubled, the amount of players. So I know Richard, you and I are on Wednesday night as umpires. So we get the tag team on Wednesday nights. And there's also games on Tuesday and Thursday, roughly 5:30 to 7:30-ish. Let's see. Jerry, you have blood drive information as well as road cleanup.
Kevin asked me when I came in today how the highway cleanup went last Saturday. And I said, we only had one guy, but poor Ken, he was out there for 4 days cleaning up that highway. No, I did drive 19, our section, and last week, and I looked, and it's kind of like it usually is in the spring of the year. So when I get back from my vacation, I think we'll try to get out there and do a little cleaning. Even if we can't pick everything up, we'll try to do what we can do. But the blood drive last week, Tuesday, over at the Department of Revenue, we had 54 pints, or let's say 54 donuts. Some of them get turned away. But Dick Hammerstrom, Ken Kosick, Abe Aberley, Cole, Bob Rand, and I were there waiting out the time and telling a lot of wild stories. So we had a good time. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Looks like Leonard's coming up.
Being we've got a couple of minutes.
Last Wednesday at the State Farm Building FFA office, the scholarships were awarded to those who had put in applications. And this year it was greatly improved. Past years, there'd be 15 to 20 people trying to scramble around. But this year, they had a very good set of criteria and a two-stage process. So the first stage reduced about 150 applications, which was down from previous years, to 50. And within that 50, there were 4 or 5 that shouldn't have been. There were 4 in the second tier to make the awards. And as one of those 4, we were given a list of numbers, which was in fact the number of the application, and all of the applicants were able to qualify for anywhere from 2 to 5 as the different categories. So your Kiwanis Ag Education Scholarship was in fact awarded, but it turned out to be a bit of a struggle because I had one number on my sheet that I had not seen. Turned out that that young lady had already been awarded a $450 scholarship in another category. We got that application and she jumped to the top immediately. And so the one we were going to select got the 450, and the young lady will get the Kiwanis $1,500 scholarship. And as an aside, I will be making up the difference for a scholarship in forestry come tomorrow.
Any other announcements? Dick?
I come through, and I just wanted to clarify with Patricia. Patricia was diagnosed with cancer. She's going to have surgery, maybe already has. And then I sent the treatment after that. And so she actually made the decision to resign from the club last week. But you know, she's a member of ours.
Thank you for that update. Just some scheduling things. Next week, we had our speaker have to cancel. So we, Jim and I and others, decided to dedicate the whole meeting to discussing what was brought up last week and in previous weeks about our foundation spending. So I've asked Abe to prepare a short overview of the foundation policies, bylaws, spending process, all of that. So if you have questions, hopefully we can answer them. And we will, I guess this is not Robert's technical term, but untable the motion and discuss it further, and perhaps hopefully reach a vote on the motion that's before the group that was tabled last week. Are there any questions on what we'll do next week? Important meeting because it kind of sets precedents for the next few years of spending for the club. No questions, okay. I'll just run through the speaker schedule. May 23rd, thank you, Jim. We're gonna have an expert on the Ukraine situation come in and talk, or who arranged it?
Peter.
Peter, thank you, Peter. May 30th, no meeting, that's Memorial Day. Then in the first Monday in June, June 6th, it's gonna be our scholarship week meeting, and we're gonna have a couple of speakers of participants in BioCore, which is a 2-year biology. It's kind of the advanced intro into the biology curriculum at UW-Madison.
But they'll be talking about the college students.
And being assimilated onto campus, into courses, into majors. So it's what we do every year, and then we'll have our 6, hopefully, scholarship awardees with one of their designated attendees to be with them. So we'll have a large group on June 6th. 13th, we're getting into a couple of weeks of interest to us seniors. Moving forward, helping seniors downsize with ease. I know some of you have gone through that recently. Maybe you could have used this 6 months ago, but some of us still are in that situation.
Possible.
Possible. Yeah. Yeah, I never liked moving, so I cannot imagine our next move from a big old farmhouse to wherever we're going. June 20th, so you want to have a good night's sleep. Expert on sleep. Again, relevant topics. There was an interesting study this last week that said for seniors, the ideal amount of sleep time is about 7 hours. Over and under are indications of potential problems in your brain. So if you get 7 hours, you're kind of hitting the sweet spot with the amount of sleep. So we can ask her about that. And then in anticipation of 4th of July, we have a reoccurring speaker, Steve Kerr, who's done several programs in the last few years, and he's going to talk about the life and times of John Philip Sousa. Any band people in here? Yes. We all know the famous March Master, right? John Philip Sousa. And then again, July 4th is on Monday, so there will be no meeting. Also next week, we will have the board meeting after our club discussion. So if there's anything the board needs to do in regards to what decisions are or are not made with the club, we'll have an open meeting. So you're welcome to stay next Monday after our regular meeting. I know the nominating committee is searching out names for president-elect and one board member. As I've said before, Leonard has agreed to serve again, so we only need one board member. There's a couple of asks out. I know they're waiting on hearing from them, and I see Dolly was online. So Dolly, Ken, Tom, and who's the Paula Dollard. Those are the 4 nominating committee members. So if you have ideas, if you want to volunteer, step up and let one of them know of your interest. Lastly, May birthdays. We missed Mike's last week on the 5th. We have John Icky on the 21st. Will you share how old you are, John?
I'm older in this club than anybody else.
Okay, so he's our longest after Herman passed away. And I'll remind you, May 21st is Herman's celebration of life out at Token Creek. Mike, will you share how old you are? You're not as old as John. That's a good answer. How old are you? Were you last week? Whoa, man. Congratulations, 79. And we also have Ken Kosick on the 24th.
81. Yeah, but does he give himself a card from the foundation?
That's right. We will get a card from Ken if it's your birthday. Mine's next month. And lastly, Keith Notbaum is on the 28th. So those are our May birthdays. As you may or may not know, I do not do sync. Did I miss somebody?
Yeah, my birthday's today.
Oh. Then we will. Let's do a song. I'm not a big songster, so somebody else can lead, but let's sing happy birthday to our May birthdays.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kiwanis. Happy birthday to you.
And I've learned to not ask everybody, but if you're willing to share, doesn't matter, Cole. 82.
That's a good year.
Yeah, that's when I started grad school in 82. Ken.
That quote was $1,300 for the leukemia.
For Rachel? Very good, very good. And Rachel was here last week to explain, correct? Any last minute checks can be given to Ken. We will forward those on to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society as per directions from Rachel. Did anybody make the after hours club meeting last Thursday? I could not, so I want to get to that group and just touch base with them. So I'll try. I think they meet twice a month, if I'm not mistaken, for sure every month. So they meet down at the Essen House, which is another good reason to go to their meetings. Good beer. Okay, any other comments? Anything for the good of the organization? Oh. Okay, I got 5 minutes extra. We're 5 minutes early. Thank you all for coming. I believe there were about 20 of us here and a handful at home. So thank you all, and we'll see you next week.